If you check your pocket or your phone right now, you'll find a number or a piece of paper that doesn't actually exist in the physical world. It can't keep you warm, you can't eat it, and a chimpanzee wouldn't trade a single banana for it. Yet, you will spend the next 40 years of your life sweating, stressing, and trading your precious time on Earth just to collect it. We call it money, but it's actually the oldest, most successful shared hallucination in human history. Our relationship with trade didn't start with gold coins or banking apps. It started around a flickering fire, tens of thousands of years ago, in small bands of hunter-gatherers. Back then, if you wanted to survive, you didn't look at a price tag. You looked at the person standing in front of you. For roughly 95% of human existence, our species lived in groups rarely larger than 100 people. In a world that small, you didn't need currency because everyone knew everyone else. If you were a skilled hunter and brought back a deer, you didn't sell the meat. You gave it away. You fed the elders, the children, and the tool makers. This wasn't altruism. It was an unwritten, deeply biological accounting system. By feeding your tribe today, you were depositing trust. You knew that next month, when your hunt failed or your child fell ill, someone else would hand you a piece of fruit or a strip of hide. Survival ran on relationships, not tokens. The ledger wasn't kept on paper, it was kept inside the human brain. Think about that. For millennia, human trust was local, it was personal. But as the ice ages retreated and humans began to figure out farming, everything changed. By about 10,000 years ago, villages grew into towns, and towns swelled into the world's first cities in places like Mesopotamia. Suddenly, you weren't just dealing with your cousins or your childhood friends, you were living alongside thousands of total strangers. And that created a massive psychological problem. If a stranger walks up to you today and asks for your food, promising they will pay you back next winter, you're going to say no. You don't know their name, you don't know their character, and you have no way to enforce the promise. Without mutual trust, society stops moving. For a long time, popular history textbooks claimed that humans solved this by inventing barter. The story goes that if you had extra wheat and wanted shoes, you just walked around until you found a shoemaker who happened to want wheat. It sounds logical, but anthropologists have searched for centuries and found zero evidence that any economy ever ran on pure barter. It's a myth. Barter is incredibly inefficient. What happens if the shoemaker wants beer instead of wheat? The system breaks down instantly. Ancient humans didn't invent barter. They invented something much stranger. In 1929, archaeologists working in the ruins of ancient Sumerian cities dug up thousands of small baked clay tokens. Some were shaped like cones, others like spheres, and some like little jars. For years, researchers were baffled by them. Then, a brilliant archaeologist named Denise Schmont-Besseret realized what they were. They were data. If you were a wealthy temple administrator in Uruk 5,000 years ago, keeping track of thousands of bushels of grain and herds of sheep in your head was impossible. So they used clay tokens. A clay cone meant one measure of grain. A sphere meant an animal. When a farmer brought their harvest to the temple storehouse, the administrator would take the corresponding clay tokens, place them inside a hollow clay ball, seal it, and bake it. To ensure no one altered the numbers, they would press the tokens into the wet outer surface of the ball before sealing them inside, creating an external record of what was hidden within. Now, listen to this. Those clay balls weren't representing physical wealth you could carry in your hand, they were the world's first receipts. They were ledgers of debt. Eventually, some ancient genius realized they didn't need to waste time baking hollow clay balls with hidden tokens inside. They could just take a flat slab of wet clay and scratch symbols directly onto it with a sharp reed. Those scratches on mud became the world's first writing system, cuneiform. Human beings didn't invent writing to record poetry, history, or prayers. We invented writing to keep track of who owed what to whom. Money came first, literature came later, but a clay ledger still requires an authority, like a king or a temple priest, to maintain it. What happened when merchants wanted to trade across deserts and oceans where the king of Uruk had no power? They needed an object that carried trust inside itself. Every culture found a different answer growing out of their environment. In the Maldives and parts of Africa, people settled on cowrie shells, tiny, durable, glossy shells that were impossible to counterfeit. In Fiji, they used the polished teeth of sperm whales. In the Americas, native populations used wampum, intricately carved beads made from clamshells. None of these items had practical biological utility. You couldn't eat a cowrie shell. You couldn't build a shelter out of whale teeth. They worked because everyone agreed they worked. Value was entirely imaginary. Then came the metal. Around 600 BCE, in a wealthy kingdom called Lydia, modern-day Turkey, King Alyattes did something revolutionary. He took electrum, a natural mixture of gold and silver found in local rivers, stamped it with the image of a roaring lion, and issued it in uniform weights. The first official coin was born. Before coins, if a merchant wanted to buy spices with gold, they had to pull out a scale, cut up chunks of metal, and argue over the purity of the gold. It was tedious and ripe for cheating. But the Lydian lion changed everything. The stamp of the king was a guarantee. It said, "This piece of metal is pure, it weighs exactly this much, and if you disrespect it, you disrespect the empire." Coins allowed trade to explode at supersonic speeds. For the next 2,000 years, gold and silver coins became the undisputed bedrock of global empires. Rome ran on silver denarii, China ran on bronze coins. European kings waged bloody wars just to seize South American silver mines. But gold and silver are heavy. They are dangerous to move across oceans, and if a pirate sinks your ship, your wealth disappears to the bottom of the sea. So, history repeated itself. We went back to the ledger. During the Tang dynasty in China, merchants grew tired of carrying thousands of heavy bronze coins for large transactions, so they left their metal coins with a trusted middleman in a warehouse, and the middleman handed them a piece of paper stating exactly how much coin was sitting in the vault. The merchant could take that paper to another city, hand it to an associate, and that person could claim the coins. It was a brilliant shortcut. But then, the merchants realized something even better. If everyone trusts the warehouse owner, why bother traveling to pick up the heavy metal coins at all? Why not just trade the pieces of paper directly? Paper money had arrived. For centuries, this paper worked because it was tied to something real. Every dollar bill, British pound, or French franc was technically a legal contract. Up until the mid-20th century, you could walk into a bank, hand them a paper bill, and demand they give you a physical piece of gold. But on August 15, 1971, the last thread snapped. U.S. President Richard Nixon announced that the United States would no longer exchange dollars for gold. The gold standard was dead. From that moment on, every major currency on Earth became fiat money. Fiat is a Latin word meaning, "let it be done." It is money by decree. It is not backed by gold, silver, shells, or clay tokens. It is backed by nothing but the stable reputation of governments and the collective agreement of billions of people who look at the same screen or the same paper and choose to believe it has value. So here is the full picture. Tens of thousands of years ago, your ancestors survived because they could look at a neighbor and trust them to share a meal. 5,000 years ago, they built massive cities because they learned to trust a scratch on a wet lump of clay. 2,600 years ago, they standardized empires using stamped pieces of river gold. And today, global civilization runs entirely on digital digits flashing across silicon screens. Money didn't break our ancestral trust. It scaled it. It allowed us to cooperate with 7 billion strangers we will never meet. Every time you tap your phone to pay for a coffee, you are continuing a social experiment that started before our species learned to write. The tokens changed, the ledgers went digital, and the cups got fancier. But the impulse is exactly the same one that allowed a hunter-gatherer to hand over their hard-won meat, trusting that the world would take care of them tomorrow. We didn't just invent a way to buy things, we invented a way to believe together.